Helps if I turn the audio on. Let me make sure I've got everything set up here correctly. Welcome in, everybody. Everything should be streaming right now. Let me just verify, double check that things are running like they should be. There we are. Okay, very good. So with that, we'll roll just a quick title here. Perfect. All right, guys, welcome back to my next live feed today, which involves just finishing up the computer here for Jeff. What I want to do is I want to change out the power supply for the EVGA 750 watt that I thought I had. So I ended up ordering one off Amazon that finally came in. Jeff also wanted a Wi-Fi card, not because he wants Wi-Fi, but because he wants Bluetooth. And we could just throw on a USB Bluetooth dongle. But I thought, you know, if we get him a Wi-Fi card with the built-in Bluetooth that frees up his USB ports, these things are like 50 bucks. This is a manufacturer I've not used before, but the reviews look good, and it's all pretty much standard chipsets these days. So Fenvi is the name of the one we're using today, and hopefully it won't need any driver, that it'll just automatically load in Windows 10. We're about to find out. Jeff also was concerned that the 1 terabyte Samsung 980 may not be enough storage for him, so he asked me to put another Samsung 980 into one of the remaining M.2 slots. Now this motherboard, the Z690 from Gigabyte, has 4 M.2 slots, so it's still going to leave him half of those available and empty. So we'll use 2. We're going to use one of the 3 located underneath this large heatsink, and then the other one is right up by the, just below the CPU. And with that, this should be a pretty quick video today. Try and wrap this up in an hour. We'll see how that goes. So first things first, I started some cable management on this build. Obviously didn't want to do anything with the power supply because I knew I was going to take it out and even removed a slot in anticipation of adding the Wi-Fi card. So we're already prepped up. As you can see, the USB has been cable managed. The front port umbilicals have been cable managed. There's really not much to do with the audio cable other than set it aside. And then what I'll have remaining then is to do the power cables. So for now, we'll just go ahead and unplug this CPU power cable. And one of the reasons I want to change the power supply is the cable management. As you can see, the Silverstone power supply we're using, it doesn't have any wire looms in there. Just a bit of a nightmare to try and cable manage, especially this end here where there's nowhere for the remainder of the cable to go, at least with this case design. So we're going to go ahead and replace that with the 750 watt EVGA. And the reason we're going 750 watt versus the 500 watt you see me typically use is Jeff is going to add a dedicated graphics card to this. And I think it's only going to be like a 1660 or 1650, but we want to make sure he has more than enough power. And he will add that himself. We've been seeing a rash of video cards getting damaged in shipping as of late, where the card doesn't have any visible damage, but something is happening to it in shipping that's requiring it to go for RMA. So Jeff will install his own video card, and we'll make sure that when we place the power supply in, we'll leave the video power cable separated from the bundle, but still tied up so it won't slap around in there during shipping. So Jeff will have an easy time of putting power to the graphics card. So with that said, let's get the power supply unboxed here. Let me grab my razor. Welcome in, everybody. Good to see everybody in the chat. I was hoping to do about 2 more videos today, but I have already run out of time. This will be it for tonight. I'll hopefully pick up at least another video tomorrow. Wednesday is typically an errand day for me. That's when I have, you know, if the car needs an oil change, if I've got a dentist appointment, if whatever errands have to be run, I try and do that all on Wednesdays, and that's why you don't generally get videos from me on Wednesday. Sometimes I do, but in general, by the time I'm done running errands, I'm usually pretty well beat up. So I play it by ear. Never say never. So there might be videos on Wednesday depending on how long the errands take, but I certainly have a lot of work to get caught up with. Okay, so we've got that opened up, and I can go ahead and pull this power supply out of here. We're done with that for now. Nothing physically wrong with the power supply, the Silverstone. It just doesn't suit the cable management needs that I have on this build. But otherwise, you know, there's nothing wrong with the power supply in and of itself. And you'll see that show up, I'm sure, here in another build before too long. So looking at the 750 watt power supply from EVGA, this is sort of a budget series, but I just think it's better done on the cable management side of things. The screws for the power supply are taped to the bottom here. And we should have a power cable in here. We do. And a non-modular power supply. The problem with the modular power supplies, they do add a little bit of resistance to the cables. They also tend to get lost over time, especially in offices where employees come and go. I've experienced too many times where a 5-minute job became a 2-day job because nobody knew where the power supply cables were, and the job couldn't be completed until I sourced power supply cables that were compatible. That could take a couple days. Typically find them on Amazon, order them, wait for them to arrive, then go make another trip back to the customer's location for what should have been a 5-minute job in one trip becomes a much more complex job because of modular power supplies. At the same time, you could also just plug in all the modular cables and just wire, zip tie down the ones you're not using, but why would you pay the added money and the extra expense and deal with the potential of connections that aren't as solid when using modular cables, especially in a business environment. It's an added expense, it's more work, and modular cable power supplies are best used in cases where there's a big window and you really want to show off the inside. It's like if you want to drive around with the hood of your car open. It's a very strange thing people do sometimes with their computers. Things they wouldn't do anywhere else in life. You don't leave your oven door open so everybody can look inside your oven. It's just a very strange behavior with computers, and I think it just goes to show that we have evolved the technology to a point where the computer in and of itself isn't important anymore. It's the box you're putting it in that's getting more and more attention and has a higher profit margin. So everybody cares about the box more than they care about what's in it, and it's surprising to me that I don't see a trend of people making fun of this and basically taking an old 286 and putting it into some fancy case with liquid cooling and watching people drool over it and go, you know, you're drooling over a 286, right? It's like judging a book by its cover and already being sold and convinced long before you've established any performance or reliability or security of the machine. It's putting the cart before the horse, and it's certainly something I can understand somebody very artistic may want to express themselves that way. But for the masses to adopt that and to prioritize it isn't why I went into business, and it's not a business I want to get into. I don't consider myself an artist. I don't have that talent. But what I do care about is making sure people are safe, secure, and their machines are reliable. I know, how boring is that, right? I also don't like wasting my customers' money on items that are completely unnecessary, that have nothing to do with performance, security, or reliability. So we'll let those people do what they want. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that as a business owner, that is just a very strange behavior on behalf of the public. The corporate companies, these corporations have not adopted this mindset because there's no purpose behind it beyond showing off. And I'm a little disgusted with the behavior of people that have to flex all the time. It seems like I don't know, they're making up for somewhere they're lacking. But as I said, that's just my personal preference. If they prefer to do that, we'll agree to each go our own way. But in the meantime, you'll notice a lot of my customers, do not want RGB. They're very clear and specific that they have no interest in it. They don't want to pay for it. And they don't want to deal with the configuration and upkeep and maintenance that adds. And, you know, they're preaching to the choir when they tell me that, because when I decided I wanted to be a computer tech, nobody did the things they're doing today. And if they were, I probably wouldn't have gotten into the business. You know, if I wanted to be a stylist or work in cosmetics, then that's what I would have done. I don't consider cosmetic work computer work. So, you know, just beyond being professional and making it look nice, it is, it's just very bizarre. It's very bizarre. Power supply is in. We still have to cable it up. This is the Wi-Fi card. I've got to figure out where I want to put this Wi-Fi card. There's RGB in this system here because I have a YouTube channel, right? There's no way I would have this system anywhere else but in front of a camera. If it's not in front of a camera, I don't need all the lights and stuff. That's just there to, it's like a flashing neon sign that advertises my business. Somebody getting a flashing neon sign in their bedroom that advertises their name, it's just a bit narcissistic, it's a waste of money, and it's just weird to me in the way I was raised. But I would have never believed you if you would have told me 25 years ago that people would prioritize and pay hard-earned money for nonsense like RGB lighting. I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said, no, people aren't that stupid. People don't have such disrespect for the value of $1 and the importance of a computer and their reliability and security and performance that they would in any way, shape, or form care about whether or not it had lights on it for purely aesthetic reasons like a lava lamp. And I would have been wrong. But I'm not wrong when it comes to business. Businesses have no interest in it, and other businesses are what keep my business in business. Consumers never, ever would have sustained my business all these years. They're too feast or famine. You know, everybody wants everything at the same time, or nobody wants anything at all. And so what I had to do is I had to sort of hoard away money for the slow weeks or months that were coming, and I never knew when they were coming. But I knew that if I couldn't withstand the period of slowness, that I wouldn't be around to answer the calls when the phone started ringing again. And it never just rang once. Once one person called, another one, and then they would just stop. It was just too much or nothing. And with business contracts and with doing work for other corporations and other small businesses and medium-sized businesses, I have a regular flow of work that's nowhere near as stressful, has nowhere near the level of anxiety. And not all of those have worked out, but they were much easier to replace than the home users. So as a computer tech for a career, I would definitely advise you to seek out work in corporate America and don't try and make ends meet doing local work for consumers. It's very, very stressful. All right, I got to get this wire tie off of here. Everybody doing good? Lawn Dog says the Z690 motherboard and 12600k processor are the exact choices I am considering for my son's new computer. It might be overkill for him. I don't know, kids are usually the ones that will use the power more than most adults do, but of course that depends on the kid and it depends on the adult. But generally speaking, I do see more younger folks with higher CPU demands than most people that use the computer to make money. People who use the computer to make money in general, they need a stable, reliable, secure system. But for the most part, the way they make money is based on what they're selling to the customer when they're talking to them over the phone and how fast they can input the data. And most of these folks are very slow typers. There's always exceptions. I'm just giving you this sort of overall general view of what I experience in my line of work. And yeah, I don't think you can really give a kid too much power as far as a computer goes. They'll use it, much more so, generally speaking, than an adult will. And what they're not using today, they'll probably find a use for as time marches on. Children tend to be a little more brave and more inquisitive and more likely to require the computer to need service that they will likely do themselves. They're more likely to get viruses. They're more likely to download illegal files. They are more likely to get viruses that way, as well as get themselves in trouble by following any old advice on Reddit or YouTube, or editing the registry. They will be reformatting and reinstalling and reformatting and reinstalling, and that is quite often, in my experience, how they fix their problems. They just format and reinstall. I shake my head at it. I don't agree that that's a fix at all, and that they're not learning anything. I mean, they're learning what caused the problem and not do that, but they're not learning how to fix the problem. And that is just discouraging for me, because I'd like to see them use that as an opportunity to learn how to fix Windows. But they may not have that interest. It's not fun and exciting as doing things you're not supposed to be doing. And one way or the other, they're still learning. They're just, the depth of the knowledge is a little more shallow by just reformatting and reinstalling. You know, learning by doing it's a great way to learn. I highly encourage it. But these days, consequences can be much more severe than they were for stuff like the kinds of viruses we used to have, and the likelihood of any getting caught for sharing files was non-existent. Whereas nowadays they're monitoring internet connections and whatnot for BitTorrent traffic and such that can make a mess legally. But it is what it is. All right, this is our CPU power cable. I'm just going to pull that through. Yeah, see how nice and braided these cables are? It's going to make our cable management so much easier on the system. The Corsair 200R doesn't have a lot of room for cables back here. You know, you've got this slight recess right in here to put your cables. And so with that Silverstone power supply, it was going to be a tight fit, and I just don't want to work that hard. Not when there are other cases that Silverstone power supply will go in with much easier cable management. This is a bit of a tight fit up here for me to get this cable on, as it always is on the 200R, because of the Mugen 5 fan is so large. But I feel like I can do it. I can't see nothing. It's so dark in there, it's hard to see what I'm doing. Let me come around, get my glasses and some light, and maybe we can get this connector on here. Oh, this is so much easier now. There it is. Okay. All right, so that's taken care of. So again, I want to make sure that people understand what I'm saying. I'm not complaining about what people are doing. I'm complaining when people say that I should be doing that. That's where I'm having a disconnect with some viewers, because they don't seem to understand that I'm running a business. They're so sort of, it seems that they're so accustomed to watching enthusiasts on YouTube, they don't recognize when they're watching a professional and what the motivations are behind the content creator. Am I here to pander to my audience? No, I am not. Am I here to beg you to subscribe and like my videos? No, I don't. I don't care. I would like that. However, the reason I make the videos is that I have work to do, and I am voluntarily choosing to share my work with you, not to get your opinion, not to get your approval, and not to get your permission. It's here strictly to give you, to invite you into a workshop and watch real work being done. Now, if you think you can do a better job, I think that's wonderful. Get to work. It's kind of amusing to me that the people who complain the most, it seems, are the people who actually do the least in real life as far as criticizing anybody else's work. I've never, not once, seen anybody criticize my work who could point to a video they made that shows me how they do it better, because they don't have one, because they've never done it. And I realize that sometimes people, they don't understand the difference between reality and scripted television, and they don't realize a lot of what they watch on YouTube has been polished and edited and reshot, and bloopers have been taken out, and close-ups and all this other stuff have been dealt with. It takes hours and hours, sometimes days, to make a little tiny bit of content when you do it that way. And I would prefer to make a lot more content, make it live, show the ugliness and reality of it, and keep it real, because I think we have a shortage of that in the world today. People want to move themselves into virtual reality and numb themselves with social media rather than actual socialization. And it's off balance quite a bit, in my opinion. I'd like to see it find a little better balance. So, but I do hope other people that have careers will bring the camera with them into work. There's a channel, Rain Man Ray's Repairs, where he shows car repairs, and he's filming it and editing it himself while he's working in a shop with other mechanics. I don't think you guys can really appreciate just how much work that is, and then how much tolerance you have to put up with entitled people telling you you did the job wrong, or it took you too long, or you don't know what you're doing. And these are complete nobodies who have a delusion that their opinion matters. Like, if you haven't established yourself as somebody else looks up to or respects, your opinion, what do you think your opinion means to them? So it's just very strange that there's a lack of gratitude for the amount of time, effort, and money that goes into making a video, and the voluntary willingness to share your knowledge with others, when the very others who complain often don't share anything but their criticisms. And I think that's a very difficult obstacle that all creators have to deal with. And it's not like creators are getting rich off of YouTube. A very small percentage, very teeny tiny. It's like the number of people who played high school football that went to the NFL. It's a very teeny tiny little piece of the number played. But I make you aware of it so that I hope that you will have some empathy and understanding for any creator that you watch, and the risks that they're taking, and their unselfishness at sharing their knowledge And if you don't like it, just don't watch it. There's no reason to disparage or to insult anybody. If you can do a better job, then you should turn on your camera and do it. I would love to see that just once in my life. Just once. I've never had anybody who's criticized me ever make a video to show me how they do it. Never happened. I've had several people say they would do it, but of course they never did. They're all talk. I've had a couple people say they want to film their build and then tell me they couldn't film their build. It was harder than they realized, and the shots didn't come out, or the audio didn't come out, or the button, they forgot to hit record and half of their build is just missing because they didn't realize it until it was too late, or their memory card filled up, or the batteries in the microphone died. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on. And then suddenly, you know, they're like, well, I said I was going to make it, but it turns out it was way more difficult than I thought it would be. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. It's honest. Now, the power supply is in. I want to put the Wi-Fi card in, and I was just debating on where I want to place it. My initial thought was to put the Wi-Fi down at the bottom because we know there's going to be a graphics card up top. I think, in theory, it could go above the graphics. No, it can't. Sometimes there's a small PCIe slot above the main X16 slot, but in this case, there isn't. So I think, you know, when I put the Wi-Fi card in, it's going to make it harder to get to that heatsink for the other NVMe drive. So let's go ahead and put that in now. Just trying to think ahead here. Also, I think people fail to realize that people are not robots. People make mistakes. People have oversights. People forget to put in a screw or forget to hook up a wire because they're human. And when you start demanding human beings behave like robots, you better be careful what you're asking for, because what you'll get is an emotionless drone that has no ability to exercise judgment, but only performs rituals. And the rituals of, you know, removing a screw and putting in a component in this direction without truly understanding why, it isn't knowledge and it isn't experience. It's just learning to dance. And, you know, if you want to learn to dance, I think that's great, but that's not what I'm about here. No matter how much people will complain about it, I'm sure there's other content creators that they will like better than me, and they should go watch them. They shouldn't be complaining to content creators unless they're paying for the content. And I mean directly paying for it, not indirectly paying for it. So that's what I mean when I say entitlement, something you don't have a right to, but still complain as though you own it or that it was made for you. It's extraordinarily insulting. But as a content creator, you will deal with that forever. You will never get so big or so popular as to ever become immune from some hateful, spiteful person who you've never met, who's never met you, criticizing and attacking you for no reason. Absolutely no reason at all. Just provoking and escalating, and this is the current state of the world we live in, unfortunately. So you have to tune those people out, but they still exist, no matter how much we tune them out. And if you decide that you want to make YouTube videos and put yourself in front of the world, understand that is going to, that you're going to be verbally assaulted and attacked the more popular you get. So the more successful you are on YouTube, the more hostility you will have to endure. So if you can keep your channel small and get to know your viewers individually so that you have support and you have kindness, for me personally, I think that's way better than getting to be a big channel and being attacked. If the channel stays small and it doesn't grow and you're like, oh, my channel's not getting any bigger, you should be grateful. But I guess, you know, people have different reasons for creating their channels. Some people want to get rich and famous, but it's the rich and famous that also have the most amount of stress. They're the ones that typically can't go out without a bodyguard, can't even open their own mail. They have to have somebody else open the mail because somebody might send you something that's dangerous. So, you know, people, I don't think they fully comprehend the risks that a content creator is putting themselves under by simply wanting to share their knowledge. I certainly don't do this part for the money. The builds that you see me build are all paid for by customers, and that has always been my bread and butter of my business. I'm just trying to put this heatsink back on, so bear with me for a second. All I decided to do was turn a camera on so I can show you guys how the work is done. And if I put a camera on anybody at their job, if you have a job and you let me film you for the whole day, I'm sure we will see where you have made mistakes through the day. And that's nothing wrong with that. People who don't make mistakes are people who stopped learning. So the heatsink, unfortunately, doesn't really line up very well for the standoffs the screws go into. So I'm kind of fidgeting with it, trying to get the screws to align properly. I wish Gigabyte had some sort of a ledge or tab or slot or something that aligned the heatsink for you, but they don't. You just sort of have to fidget with it until the holes line up, and then we can get the screws in there. There we go. Okay, so that adds the 980 Pro as a secondary drive with the EVGA power supply, and then all I have to do is put the Wi-Fi card in and finish the cable management, and then this can go off to Jeff here pretty soon. Windows 10, I think I've already activated it and updated it, so everything else should be pretty straightforward. So again, while looking at that, I was trying to figure out which slot I wanted to use for this Wi-Fi card. And I think I'm right with the bottom slot where I removed the cover already, because we want to keep this area open. I'll probably want to hook that fan up since he's adding a graphics card. If there was no graphics card going in, I would not hook up the front fan. Here's the Wi-Fi adapter that has built-in Bluetooth. The Bluetooth is usually USB. There's typically a cable that plugs on to the edge of the card and then onto a USB 2 header on the motherboard. So, well, there should be, here we go, a little bag. Oh, what's that? A screw. That's weird to include a screw. They've got a different bracket for a low profile case, which obviously we don't need. Yeah, so it's a USB 2 cable, and it's going to consume 2 USB slots, unfortunately, with this connector, even though it's only using one of the USB connections. However, it's USB 2, so I don't really care. We should have a couple of those available down here. And that's the other benefit of putting the card low, is for cable management. It'll hide the cable really well. If we put the cable up here, sorry, if we only have 3 places we can put this card, here, here, or here, and we can't really use this top slot because that's the fastest slot. That's for the graphics card. So that leaves us these last 2. This board doesn't have a lot of expansion because of all of the M.2 slots that take up room, where normally there would be other PCIe slots. But you're trading the traffic lanes of PCIe cards for PCIe storage is essentially what you're doing. And that's why it's designed that way. And if we look here on the back of the card, there's a little connector right there that this would go into. And I just can't tell which direction it goes. I think it's going to go this way. I hit it right the first time. So that just connects on like so. The card's going to plug in. It's got little dust caps on it where the antennas will go. These just come off and can be thrown in the recycle bin. And then this part here, oh, of course I put my screwdriver away, didn't I? Here we go. It looks like our lowest and closest USB port is going to be right there. So I should be able to put that in here. Again, I'm going to need a flashlight and glasses. I can't really see in there. So we'll try this again with a little bit of light. Okay. Missing pin is on the top row. So we'll plug that in right there. There we go. And then we'll slide the card right here. So you see how that little tiny card fits in that long slot. And it just means we're only going to use those where the copper fingers are, or brass, whatever that is. I guess it wouldn't be brass, that's non-conductive. But where the connectors go into the plug, those are the only data lanes we're using, and the rest of the connectors in this socket are just not used. And then we can lock this down and we can fire it up, and hopefully Windows will automatically load the driver for this, Windows 10. I'm hopeful. No, it's not seated in there very well. Let's try this one more time. That should go in there. My cable fell out. I guess I didn't have it in all the way. Story of my life. There, that's better. All right, and that should seat all the way in, like so. And now the thumb screw can go back in, if I can find it. Where did it go? In the case. There it is. Okay, I'm going to try this again. Okay, that should be it. These are the antennas for the Wi-Fi here. I won't ship the computers with antennas attached because they will likely break in shipping, and that's why if you ever order anything Wi-Fi, generally you have to attach the antennas yourself. Most Wi-Fi routers you have to attach the antennas to, unless they're fixed antennas, obviously. But generally speaking, that's why the antennas are not attached out of the box, because you'd probably be really upset that the number of times you'd see that they had broken. So these little yellow caps can come off. We don't really need those on there. And I need video, and internet. So there's internet, and there's video right here. And then I need a keyboard and mouse, and we can fire this bad boy up. And hopefully, we don't have to load the driver for the Wi-Fi. I've been having a lot of issues with my microphone falling off lately. I don't know why. I guess I've not been attaching it very well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and plug the keyboard and mouse in up front. That allows me to test the front USB at the same time. Hit the power button. Things should start moving. Yeah, fan is turning. Let's go to HDMI input 1 on the capture card. And let's minimize me. Here we go. We're loading already. and hopefully it loads the driver. I'm going to go to Windows Update. It was just Update Tuesday the other day, so I don't know if this machine got those updates or not. Yeah, Intel Bluetooth, so it's an Intel chip on there. That's good. Perfect. Yeah, that's that big cumulative update. That's going to take a couple minutes. We'll let that run. While it's running, if you have any technical questions for me, or you want to know what things you would need to be prepared for, if you want to become a content creator and put yourself out in the public, I'm happy to share my experience with you, the good and the bad. I'm more focused on the bad just so that you can be prepared and fully know what to expect, so that you don't end up giving up or feeling defeated. You should expect to be attacked, and you should expect the more popular you get, the more frequent and the nastier the attacks get. The benefit is that you have the reward of ideally doing something you've always wanted to do and focusing your attention on the vast amount of viewers you have that are kind, rather than on that handful that try to. Oftentimes you're not getting attacked by as many people as they want you to think you are. So it's a psychological warfare game that is played, where you might have a handful of jerks who have created multiple accounts and they find entertainment in harassing you. It's just a form of bullying, is all it is. So, hey, there's Marty Yoel, contributes $10. Thank you, Marty. What do we have in the chat? Carrie, what do you think about removable SSDs on the Microsoft Surface products? I haven't seen anything about that. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, let's see here. John Williams says, Rain Man Ray is totally awesome. He is great. I've seen some of his videos recently. Yeah, I subscribe to him. I went to school to be an auto mechanic, an ASE certified auto mechanic, and computers were my hobby. And then everything flipped the other way. Cars are now my hobby and computers are my career. So I'm still a gearhead. I still enjoy cars very much. That's why you see me do the videos with Subaru Mike. I just work the camera. And my experience around an engine knows, I know where to point the camera when Subaru Mike is saying, hey, I'm going to take out the oil pressure sensor or whatever. I know exactly where to put the camera. Having a camera person who doesn't understand what they're filming is very frustrating. You might as well not have a camera person at all, because what you end up having to do is you have to stop working until you can help the camera person, assuming you can see the video that they're filming, and you can tell them, I need you to point the camera here, and then you wait for them to do that, and then you can continue on with your work. So knowing where to point the camera is essential in order to keep the workflow moving optimally. And so my experience in automotive really helped me in that regard. However, back when I was doing the automotive stuff, there really wasn't much electronics in a car. You know, there was still timing. Fuel injection was offered on higher end cars, but it wasn't a normal thing. Throttle body injection was a thing for a while. And Yeah, now they've become all computerized. And a lot of mechanics don't like that. A lot of old school mechanics, I should say. Can I turn the build around so you can see the fans running? I think so. I think the cable should allow for that. Let's see. The only fans you should see running would be the CPU cooling fan and the rear exhaust fan. The rear exhaust fan, you know what? I don't even think I hooked up the rear exhaust fan. I don't think I plugged it in, did I? Or did I? Let me check that out, because it's not spinning. No, I never hooked it up. There's the cable. Right there. So yeah, the only fan running right now will be the one under the power supply, which you can't see, and of course the CPU cooling fan. Ski Man says, good evening, Carrie and all. I can never get a camera person. For me, flying radio control is difficult, especially when I fly 3D and pattern. The Cosmos 2 build I did in 2013 went to a camera operator who films, I forget what it's called, but Red Bull sponsors the planes that fly through the, I don't know what they're called, but they have like floating gates, for lack of a better word, these things in the sky that they have to, what's it called? Anyway, these planes are very, very fast. It's a very high-speed sport that takes place in the sky. And the person that needed the Cosmos 2 build is the videographer for the team that flies competitively in these extreme sport. I don't know if it's sports or stunts. I would guess it's a sport. And you've got to be a very good camera operator to follow with these high-speed planes going through their obstacle courses. All right, where are we at on this update? That cumulative update's still waiting. So we'll give that a little more time. And again, happy to address any technical questions you have while we're waiting and watching the paint dry. Air racing. Yeah, thank you guys. That's the term. It's air racing. Pending install, pending restart. Okay, well, I guess we're going to restart it then. And this machine is absolutely whisper quiet. We never broke 71 degrees Celsius on 22 minutes on Prime 95 when we tested it. And I also need to make sure that the other Samsung 980 is formatted and ready as drive D. And then when I hook up the optical drive, which is just there physically, it hasn't been wired up yet, I want to make sure I do that last so it automatically becomes drive letter E, so then I don't have to change it manually. If you do things in the right order, you'll get the drive letters you want without having to assign them manually. Okay, so we're back up and running. Let's go back to Windows Update again. All right, we're about going to wrap this up. That's all I wanted to show you. That was the remainder of the work that was waiting here on Jeff's build. I was waiting on a couple of parts, well, the power supply and the Wi-Fi card. And I know I have another Samsung 980. I bought 3 of them for this to demonstrate the RAID configuration. And I can't remember what I did with the third one, so I'm going to go on an Easter egg hunt and find out what I did with that other Samsung 980. I don't know if I used it in another build or if I placed it in one of the enclosures, the USB enclosures. I can't remember now, but I know there's supposed to be another one around here somewhere, and they're expensive. Lawn Dog wants to know what CPU cooler and fan did you choose to dissipate the 125 watts. The processor will need to be cooled. Well, the video exists here on this build of the 12th gen here for Jeff. You should know this heatsink just by looking at it. I've used this heatsink more than any other. It's the Scythe Mugen 5. This is the Black Edition. Anybody else out there got a Scythe Mugen 5 Black Edition or Silver? And if so, how do you like it? Oh yeah, looks like we got a Samsung alert here in the corner. Let me take a look at that. I gotta make the screen bigger for me. You guys won't see any difference. A firmware update is available. Well, we don't want to do that now while it's updating, but we can certainly check to see what it is. I see. So it is on the other Samsung 980 Pro that we installed. When we update the firmware, it will need to shut the computer off. You notice how the letter N appears here on the Samsung Magician next to the word update? That's how you know if a new update is awaiting for either the Magician software itself or any of your Samsung drives that you have installed. So I am going to just postpone doing that until this process is done. And then we'll restart, and upon the restart, we'll go ahead and update the firmware, and then after that, I think we'll say goodbye, and that'll wrap it up for today's show. The 12600 is not as hot as a 12700 or a 12900. The 12900 I'm having difficulty, not the 12900, when we deal with any chip that ends with the number 900 from Intel, especially a 900K, if it's a 10900K, 11900K, 9900K, cooling those can be a challenge. But anything below that should cool just fine with a Mugen 5. In fact, the 12900K will cool fine with a Mugen 5 unless you're really pressing it hard for a long period of time. And if you run your computer in that way, then that cooler won't be good enough for you. Okay, so that one's done. Let's restart. Hey, there's $10 again from Madi. Hey, Madi, thank you again. Sean Gallagher says he's got the silver Mugen 5. He likes it a lot. Stealth Mode's got the Mugen 5. He says after a year it performs flawlessly. David Martinez loves the Mugen 5. Slappy says he got the silver and it works great. Pikeman says he's considering a Mugen 5 Black Edition for an Intel 10700. Oh yeah, it's way overkill cooling for that CPU. Now, this is a great opportunity for me to show you the firmware update process of the Samsung SSDs. Not all SSD manufacturers make this easy. I've never, not once, had an SSD fail as a result of updating a firmware. If anything, it makes the drive last longer and perform better. So it's very, very highly recommended that you always run the latest firmware. Now, Intel does a really good job with the Intel Driver Update tool that I've shown you for updating the firmware on their solid-state drives. And Samsung does a good job. But how you find firmware updates on Western Digital or AData or Silicon Power or Sabrent, I have no idea. You have to dig for them, apparently. So I like how it brings it to your attention. Hey, this is the Magician software. You don't have to go looking for us. We're letting you know there is a new firmware on one of your drives. So if we click on that alert and hit the update button right here, watch how fast this is. It's going to check system compatibility for Optimus or whatever. Your computer will be shut down after updating firmware in 20 seconds. Please save all of your work before updating firmware. Do you want to continue? Okay. Watch. Watch how fast. That's it. We'll go ahead and shut it down. Now, it would have shut down after the countdown, but I just went ahead and expedited it. The reason it has to shut down is the computer BIOS doesn't recognize the drive anymore as the same drive. The computer BIOS is recognizing the firmware of any drive. So when you change the firmware, it's just like changing a drive. So the computer has to be powered back on so the BIOS can go back and look again to see, oh, there's a new drive. Let me make sure I have the right driver for it. It's all internal to Windows 10 or any Windows to load the storage driver. And then it loads it. It's seamless to you as the end user. Because Windows Update updated the Intel display driver, it gave us an older one. So the way you get rid of that, with Windows Update wanting to give you a newer Intel video driver, is go ahead and take the video driver from Windows Update, let it override the Intel driver with the Windows Update driver, and you go back to Windows Update and make sure that there's no more updates being offered, right? That the video driver has been installed. Once that's done, then you can go back to the Intel Update Assistant, and it might tell you that you have a new driver for your video card. In this case, it doesn't. I thought it was going to tell us it needs, but then install the Intel video driver afterwards if it's still being offered. In this case, there's just newer drivers for the Wi-Fi card we added. Obviously, this Wi-Fi card is an Intel-based chipset on it, which is probably what was a deciding factor since I didn't recognize the manufacturer's name of FenVi or FenVi. It looks to have, it's 802.11.8AX, and it's got misspellings on the box. I don't see it promoting that it's using an Intel chip. Usually they do. But it's kind of funny. I'll show you in a second. Let's go ahead and get these updates installed right quick. That one's done. Move on to the next one. So that way Jeff will have the Bluetooth that he wants, even though he doesn't need the Wi-Fi. But I feel better with this kind of a Bluetooth. I think it's a stronger, more reliable Bluetooth than those dongles, especially if the dongle's plugged in the back. The computer case is like a big metal obstruction getting to the signal, so your Bluetooth signal is generally not as good. Now that being said, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. This is as good as we need it to be. I want to check one other thing. I did put 64 gigs of RAM after Jeff saw the show. He had, I said I recommended 64. He wanted 32. He said, okay, do 64. So I went ahead and put 2 sticks of 32 gig each of the team memory in there. You see there's an i5-12600k. It sees all 64 gigs of RAM, and Windows should be activated. See if Windows is activated. Yeah, it's activated. All right, so let me shut this down, and then I'll show you what I was chuckling about with the Wi-Fi box. So let's go back over to camera 1, full screen. There we go. How do you pronounce this word right here? Instruction. I don't know. I'd like to buy a vowel. Yeah, it's unusual. They don't mention they're using an Intel chipset here. So they did give us a small instruction booklet and a small driver disk. I don't know who has optical drives anymore, but there it is. In fact, all that will go in the motherboard box along with the antennas to go to Jeff. So technically all this goes up here. And then this small low-profile bracket can go in the recycle bin. Why they included a screw, I don't know, but we'll put that in with the spare screws. And that's going to be it. I think that's... Actually, I'm going to finish on schedule today. See, it could happen. Oh, Jeff Van Fleet joins us. Hey, Jeff. Make sure Jeff is a moderator in here. Oh, I forgot to check that secondary drive was formatted. Let me turn this back on. Let me just check that one more time. Let's make sure that Samsung 980 is formatted. Yes, when I do updates of solid-state drive firmware, it doesn't matter if it's a boot drive or if it's got an OS. It makes no difference ever. Highly, highly recommended that you update the firmware on your solid-state drive if one is available, if you want the best reliability and performance out of your solid-state drive. They're fixing bugs. They're fixing sometimes solid-state drives through firmware updates. I've seen them where they kill themselves. The drives die prematurely. And these firmware updates can be critical, not only to performance, but the lifespan of the solid-state drive. It's not a joke. They're not releasing these firmware updates for fun, for something to do. They're paying developers to write code to protect their product and give their customers the best experience possible. And if you negate that, that's on you. It's one thing if you don't know, but if you know and then you choose to ignore it because you have some unrealistic fear that's unjustifiable, it's really hard to have any empathy or sympathy for somebody who puts their imagination over reality. Now, I just want to double check this drive is installed correctly, so we'll go to disk management. Now, this is showing it's already formatted. I am concerned that the RAID array configuration is still in the host protected area of the drive. So I'm going to reboot one more time. I'm going to go into the BIOS, and I just want to make sure that it doesn't see any RAID configuration on that drive. If so, I want to remove it. That can affect our performance in a negative way if we're not actually using it in a RAID mode. And it can make data recovery, if that's necessary in the future, more complicated because no one would expect it to have a RAID array configuration on a standalone drive. It just conflates, it makes things more confusing than they need to be. So what I'm going to do is try and get into the BIOS this time. This thing booted so fast I missed the opportunity. And we'll just check the BIOS to see if it shows any RAID configuration existing on that second drive I just put in. I should have removed the RAID array configuration from all the drives before I remove them. So now every time I put one of those three in, I have to keep checking each one manually, which is working way harder than I really need to. And I just can't seem to get the timing right on this. So let's shut it down one more time. Shut it completely off. And let me come around here. Let me hit the power button. There it goes. And I'm going to start pressing delete. Hey, we made it. See that? Before anything happened on the screen. So as soon as I saw something on the screen, I already was too late to press anything. That's why I was struggling. Let's go to, where was it? Miscellaneous? I got to remember how I did this. NVMe configuration, drive 1, drive 2. I'm not seeing anything indicating I know I have to enable the VMD controller. I don't want to do that right now, so I think what I'll do to play it safe is I'll just go ahead and manually wipe the drive with disk part, and we'll clean it. That should remove any information out of the host protected area. And then I can create the new partition and format it. And then we'll be done for the night. So this should just take a minute. Don't take this clean command lightly. You make sure you select the right disk because it is irreversible and it will permanently destroy the data on the disk, requiring professional data recovery if you need to get it back. So I type CMD, right click on the command prompt and choose Run as Administrator. This is called running an elevated command prompt. And then when we're here, we type in the word disk part and press enter, and then we type list disk, and we'll see we want disk 1, so we'll select disk 1, and then we'll type clean. Now we can exit the disk part utility, and then we can exit the command prompt, and then we can right click on the start button, go to disk management, and it's going to determine automatically that we have an unpartitioned, unmanaged disk, and it's going to ask us if we want to partition it. So yes, disk 1 is not partitioned, GPT is fine. We click OK, and it creates a partition. Now we right click on the partition, select new simple volume, and we're going to go ahead and format that out. Just keep clicking next all the way through. I'll get rid of this volume title and hit finish. That's going to format and make this drive letter D. So now when I go to my computer or this PC logo icon, you'll see it. There's our C drive with Windows. That's a Samsung 980. There's the new D drive we just put in. I always like to make sure that indexing is turned off just to save space and time. As the drive gets filled with files, the consumer or the customer won't have to deal with it. We can clear out these notifications. We don't need any of that. And then all that remains is cable management. So we'll go ahead and shut that down. That's complete. I just almost forgot to do that, so I'm glad you guys caught me on that. Brian Lee contributes $5. He says, thanks for your valuable lessons. Thank you, Brian. Winston Liu with $5 Canadian says, Vancouver, from the Vancouver Winter Games of 2010 Olympics. All right, just a little more than a decade ago. Thank you, Winston. Thank you, Brian. Thanks you guys for joining me, and I hope that you get a little tidbit here or there from the content that helps you resolve or build a computer in the future. Always enjoy your build. If you get frustrated, just walk away from it, do something else for a while. The build should always be enjoyable. When it stops becoming enjoyable, that's when you're most likely going to cause damage to the system out of your frustration. And so for the sake of making sure you don't damage anything and for your own enjoyment, if you're not enjoying it, save it for when you can. Brian Burns contributes $5. Thank you, Brian. All right, guys. That is going to wrap it up for me. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your kindness. And yeah, and we're all good to go. I never update firmware on mechanical hard drives. I've never been able to do that without severe consequences. But on solid state drives, whether they're SATA or NVMe, I can't emphasize how important it is. And when manufacturers don't release firmware updates, it doesn't mean that the drive doesn't need one. It means that they don't have the financing or the resources to issue those updates. It's costly to do it. So the fact that those updates are coming out regularly from Intel and Samsung, and they're so easy to apply, it's one reason why when you're shopping, there's more to pay attention to, in my opinion, besides the price, the length of warranty, and the performance, or how much DRAM cache it's got. Also take a look at what utility software you might get to help maintain the performance of that solid state drive over time. And Samsung does a really good job with that, and you will pay a little bit more money for Samsung, but you're also getting a little bit more in return. And I think that's going to wrap it up. So I went a little over. So what's new? But I'm still close to where I wanted to be. And Bryant, thank you again, another $5 contributions. That is going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you again for watching. I will see you all again very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.